The first signs were subtle. A twitch in the left hand, a tingle in the spine, an unsettling feeling like a storm was brewing just beneath the surface. Jace Walker didn't think much of it at first. A long day at the docks, a few late nights at the bar with the guys, and the weight of life pressing against his chest could explain the wear and tear. That's what he told himself, anyway. But the twitches didn't stop. It began with his dreams, or more accurately, his nightmares. Visions of shadowy creatures chasing him through dense woods, his feet sinking into mud as their snarls grew louder and louder. Every morning, he woke drenched in sweat, his heart pounding, and vague aches all over his body. Then came the pain. One night, Jace was sitting alone in his small apartment, trying to enjoy his dinner of fried chicken and mashed potatoes. His fork slipped from his hand and clattered onto the floor. His fingers had cramped up, locking in a grotesque claw-like position. With a curse, he flexed his hand repeatedly until the cramp eased. As he picked up the fork, something caught his eye, a thick, dark nail jutting out from his index finger. He blinked. It was just his imagination, wasn't it? He touched the nail, and his breath caught. It was real. It felt wrong. The nail was curved, black as obsidian, and impossibly sharp at the tip. "What the hell?" he whispered, panic settling in his chest like a heavy stone. By the next morning, the nail was gone, his hand entirely normal. Jace convinced himself he was just overtired or drunk, a mix of exhaustion and overwork messing with his head. But the symptoms only grew worse. Unraveling. Jace started avoiding the guys at work, brushing off their invitations to go out after shifts. His strength became almost unnatural, lifting shipping crates that normally took two men barely required an effort. His temper grew short, flaring at minor inconveniences, or when anyone got too close to him. Then there were his eyes. One evening, Jace caught sight of his reflection in a window. The streetlights illuminated his face, casting his brown irises in an unsettling golden hue. His pupils were wrong, elongating like a slit, cat-like and predatory. Panicked, he threw his jacket hood up and bolted for home, ignoring the horrified stares of passers-by. The changes progressed rapidly after that. Hair began to sprout across his body, coarse and black as midnight, clustering along his arms, back, and legs. The bones in his jaw ached constantly, as if fighting to rearrange themselves. Jace stopped going to work. He barely ate, spending his days huddled in the dark corners of his apartment, shivering uncontrollably. And his mind wasn't his own anymore. Whispers began to fill the silence, deep and guttural voices that spoke in a language he couldn't comprehend. But he understood their intent. They beckoned him to embrace the monster within, to shed the chains of humanity, to revel in his strength. Sometimes he couldn't fight the voices. Sometimes he wanted to give in, losing control. It happened one rainy night. The rain hammered the city, washing grime down the gutters as thunder cracked in the distance. Jace stood at his apartment window, staring blankly into the night. His reflection was no longer recognizable. His face had elongated, his jaw sporting jagged teeth that didn't belong to any human. Thick, dark fur framed his features, and his golden eyes gleamed in the lightning flashes. A hunger gnawed at him, a primal, uncontrollable urge that twisted his stomach and set his muscles aflame. His claws, no longer nails, scraped against the windowsill as he struggled to resist the pull. But the voices wouldn't stop. "You're starving.
Go.
Hunt.
Feed."
Before he knew what was happening, Jace found himself on the streets, drenched by the downpour. His senses were heightened beyond anything he'd experienced. He could smell the distant stench of garbage, hear the patter of rats in the sewer, and feel the pulse of warm bodies moving in the apartments around him. And then he heard it, footsteps, cautious and uncertain, echoing through a nearby alley. "Hello," a voice called. "Anyone there?" A young man stepped into the dim light, his face pale as he shielded himself from the rain with a newspaper. Jace froze, his muscles tense, as instinct screamed at him to pounce. "No," Jace growled, his voice warped and guttural. The man turned, startled. "What the—" But Jace couldn't hold back anymore. The monster emerges. The transformation was violent, bones cracking and muscles shifting as he fell to all fours. His flesh tore, only to reform as his body expanded, growing more monstrous by the second. The man's scream echoed down the alley, but Jace wasn't Jace anymore. He was a creature of nightmares, all fangs and fury, moving with inhuman speed. The hunger was unbearable. The beast within him took control, and the man's screams were silenced. When Jace woke, he was lying in a pile of filth behind a dumpster. His clothes were shredded, his body aching from head to toe. Blood, human blood, streaked his arms and mouth. The realization hit him like a freight train. He had done it. He had crossed the line. And he wasn't sure he wanted to come back. The final descent. In the following weeks, Jace disappeared completely. He no longer returned to his apartment, no longer recognized the world of humans as his own. The whispers were no longer external, they were him. Every inch of him had embraced the monstrous form lurking beneath the surface. He prowled the outskirts of the city, a shadow in the woods and a ghost in the darkness, moving only at night. Rumors began to spread. A creature in the trees, a predator no one could see, but everyone felt. And yet, deep inside, a faint flicker of his humanity remained. On particularly quiet nights, when the moon was high and the forest was still, he could almost hear a whisper, his own voice, weak and pleading, fighting to be free of the monster within.